Hi, everyone. My name is Olivia Jack, and I'm going to be talking about a project I've been working on for the last year and a half about. It's a piece of software that you can use for live coding visuals that I used last night, but it's also kind of more than that. It's been an ongoing investigation into a few different things. Collaboration in creating live visuals, possibilities of peer-to-peer technology on the web, and also feedback loops. And so it's also a tool called Hydra that you can access at this website. And so one of the inspirations for this, a big inspiration for this investigation is this project called the Satellite Arts Project by Kit Galloway and Sarah Rabinowitz in 1977. And they were at Caltech, and they got access to a satellite in which they could send live video streams between two different places. They also did a project called The Hole in Space in public space in New York and LA, where they just sent video between two places. And this was really exciting to them because this was kind of the first time anyone had seen this in this way. There wasn't Hangouts, there wasn't Skype, where you could just, I'm going to video chat with someone. And so with both this project and Hole in Space, just seeing a live video of somewhere else in real time was kind of mind-blowing. And they talked about, this marks the first time that the geographically dispersed electronic image was contextualized as a live, immersive place where artists and others could convene and co-create together on a scale that could be as culturally inclusive as desired. And so they're saying just this thing of putting two images on top of each other, just by doing that, you have the possibility to create a third space. It's not there, and it's not over here. And this is before the internet. This is in 1977, and so now we kind of, maybe we're more used to this idea of this other space, or maybe sometimes we don't feel like it's another space, maybe it's here. But I think this reference is inspiring to me for various reasons. Also this idea of it being immersive, because now I keep hearing buzzwords of like, the immersive web and all this stuff, we're gonna have virtual reality on the web and all this stuff. Well, this is 1977, and maybe we were already kind of doing this. And then also this idea of it being a place that just, we're actually just exchanging video streams here, but now somehow we've created a space or another place. And I think it's sort of a metaphor that we use a lot now, just, a website. I'm gonna go to the website. I'm gonna, the address, there's a page. And so there's all these kind of metaphors that talk about this place, when really what's happening when I go to a website is, my computer sending a message to a server, the server sending a message back. It's just sending some text. My browser's interpreting the text in a certain way. And because it happens to be the same usually, if I go to the same website, I get kind of a similar information back. It makes this sort of, it's kind of a place. But so this is really inspiring to me, and I started working with this protocol called Webrtc that's real-time web streaming, and it's a client-side protocol. So that means basically that you can directly send video, audio, and data between clients. There's still a server that helps set up the initial connections, but then once they're connected, you can, two clients who've been connected to each other can just directly send video to each other. And so once I started working with this protocol, I got interested in sort of kind of using a different metaphor than this place metaphor of like, what if we don't think about a website or going to a website or the web as a place? What if we think of it as a flow of information? And yeah, this protocol, Webrtc, opens up a lot of different options in terms of decentralization and people are doing interesting things like WebTorrent, implementing BitTorrent just on the web, or kind of peer-to-peer hosting, and that's really exciting. And so, yeah, just this diagram gets used for a lot of different things, talking about centralized versus distributed infrastructure, or actually ways of interacting with services on the web. And this protocol, Webrtc, sort of enables this kind of structure on the right. And then I became interested, okay, I just want to play around with this idea. And part of this idea is sort of, now maybe this is a stretch here. This is an ongoing thing, but I kind of saw similarities between this image and this image on the right of, oh, we have a bunch of things that we can interconnect with each other in lots of different ways. And so I became interested in using this thing, this is an analog video synthesizer. It's the Sandin image processor made by Daniel Sandin in 1971. And here what we have are these boxes. I'm sure a lot of people in this room know a lot more about modular synthesizers than I do, but we have these boxes, and each box does something to a signal. And then we have these cables where we can connect these boxes to each other, and the way in which the cables are connected transforms the signal in different ways, and changing those ways of connecting the boxes then creates different possibilities within the image over here. And so I started just, I'm going to play with the browser as if it were a modular synthesizer. And so this is using Webrtc, and all of these windows here are on the same computer, but they actually could be, one of these windows could be in China, one could be here, one could be on my phone. But this was just sort of, I don't really know why I'm interested in this. I'm interested in this. I'm going to play around by writing code to explore this idea. And so I just made code, I called it RTC patch bay, to just route Webrtc streams. And so here, there's the two streams on the left are being sent to this one over here, where it's blending them together, and then these two, which is a camera feed, is being combined with that. And I just sort of did this as a proof of concept. And at that point, I didn't know really what I wanted to do with it. So rather than kind of make a user interface with knobs and sliders and buttons and decide this is what I'm going to be able to do and this is not what I'm going to be able to do, I just started playing with it directly in the browser console, writing code to interact with this thing, and to say, oh, what can I do with this? And so that, and again, it's really inspired by this idea. And one of the things that Dan Sandin said about the modules are designed to maximize the possibility of interconnection, thereby maximizing the number of possible modifications of the image. And so this is all part of this browser experiment that you can go to. And so this kind of modular idea is at play in various levels. One of the things is that you can connect to anyone else who's connected and use what they're doing as an input. But also, I sort of designed the live coding interface around this modular synthesis idea. And so I'm just going to show a little bit. Let's see. So one of the basic units in this is just an oscillator, and then I have to connect it to an output or a screen in order to be able to see it. So here I have an oscillator. So I just write the code directly in the browser. And the oscillator can have various parameters like frequency, or how separated the colors are. And then I can add another transformation function or another, it's the equivalent of one of those boxes in modular synthesizer land, to this thing. And so this is all JavaScript, by the way. Uh-oh, what did I do wrong? Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I can keep adding things here. And then I can repeat it and keep changing that. And so this is sort of, yeah, kind of extending that modular idea, but also in the way that I'm interacting with the code. And a lot of sort of generative graphics are based on certain analogies about how we think about the world. For example, processing comes, a lot of it comes from sort of a graphic design perspective of, you have a canvas, you're going to draw a shape, you're going to draw another shape. If you want to draw a bunch of shapes, you have to do a for loop and do the same thing a bunch of times. You choose a paint color, you draw. And then there's like 3D world of things where you have a mesh and you have lights and all this stuff. And kind of instead of those metaphors, I was interested in using this metaphor of signal flow, basically. And so this way of writing the code kind of makes it easier to experiment with that. Because at the end of the day, you know, like the computer doesn't actually know what a shape is, a square, or any of that. Like, you're just telling it, put this color in this pixel, this color in this pixel, this color in this pixel. And so actually, all of this entire chain of functions compiles to a single shader that runs on the graphics card. And so the other thing here is now this is like one thing, but what about that kind of routing diagram, and we want to make lots of things and combine them with each other. So here I can have kind of multiple canvases or frame buffers to do different things and then mix them with each other. So I'm going to use the camera here and send this to a different output. Oh, it's this one. Hi. And then what I can do is I can, actually, let me see if I can get the camera. There we go. So then I can actually blend these two things together. So take one of them, blend it with the other, and then I'll send it out to the third output. That's called O0. So now I'm blending these two things together. And so there's blend operations are sort of just doing arithmetic on pixel colors. But another thing that I sort of borrowed from modular synthesizer land was the idea of modulating something, and that can be using the colors of one thing to affect the coordinates of another thing. So instead of blend, here I could do modulate. And so that is using the colors of this to affect the coordinates of that, which can be really fun, and it gets a sort of warp thing. And so sources in Hydra can be the screen itself. So like a lot of my visuals yesterday were just kind of using feedback with the screen itself, which I think is fun. I had a live coding thing where the code actually becomes part of the visuals. Or this is my Twitter feed. Let's see. Yeah, this is my Twitter feed. Oh, sources can also be kind of any application or any browser tab. So this is using Google Maps with some feedback on itself. Just gonna let. And this is using, it's a live stream of Times Square and a live stream of an aquarium. Just let it run for a little. And then I'm live coding on top of it. And yeah, I do think, going back to the original reference, just putting these two things on top of each other creates some sort of interaction between these two places without necessarily saying, oh, I'm going to do motion tracking on the movements of each person, and I'm going to let it control this other thing. And so this is something that's been really exciting for me to play around with. And now I want to talk a little bit more about feedback with this, because one of the things that I've been really interested in exploring with this whole system is feedback, and it's been exciting to see like so many talks kind of touch on it in different ways. And so feedback, video feedback at its simplest level. I'm actually just going to show it here. So here I have a webcam, and like video feedback is just if I point the webcam at itself, and then I don't know. But it's kind of hard. It's very chaotic, and so small changes can make either something that's kind of ordered or something that's kind of out of control. And so it's fun to play with it also just directly in the code. So for example, if I want to make something like a fractal using this system, so here I'm making a shape. And then what I can do is I can blend this shape with its own output. And so right now, nothing changes really because it's just blending it the same thing with itself. But then if each time after I blend it, I repeat the entire thing, then you can try to imagine what's going to happen when I do this. Let's see. Woo! So each time it's repeating itself and repeating itself and repeating itself. And it happens almost instantaneously, but not quite. And so that makes a fractal, which is something that at different scales is a repetition of itself. And then one other example, so I could use the camera, and then I could blend it with its own output. And I'm actually going to use my face. And I can use that modulate function again to have the colors of the camera start to move the coordinates. And so, and then I get this sort of liquidy thing. And so it turns out fluid dynamics, in some ways, you're using the state of a system and things like velocity and pressure to the past state to affect the future state. And so actually, and I'm not being rigorous, I'm being very hand-wavy about this, but this is related to fluid dynamics. And so to me, it's exciting to make this kind of simple way to interact with these things that are often thought of as really complicated. And if you want to use fluid dynamics, you have to read about Navier-Stokes and like do all these really complicated things. And you can, and also you can think about it in this sort of other way of thinking about it. So that's been really exciting to me. And let's see. Yeah, this is from a paper in the 80s called Space-Time Dynamics in Video Feedback by Jim Crutchfield, and he actually talks about how, I think there's audio for this. I don't know if it's working, but it's not so necessary. There we go. And so he talks about how this simple thing of taking a camera and having it look at itself or at its own output can model really complicated things and compute really complicated things. That it's kind of interesting to me that just now with modern graphics cards we can like create algorithmically this kind of noise that you could also do just with an analog system. And so this is a really great, he has a video, this is in the 80s, he's a physicist, he has a video, and then he also wrote a paper of the very specific equations for all of this. And let's see. Yeah. And these are some sort of things I've done with feedback. And I very much, as I started this about a year and a half ago, this project, and then it just takes me to a new place each time, and I just keep experimenting with it. Or this is reaction diffusion using Hydra. And then Daniel Sandin, who created the original video synthesizer that I was talking about, he wrote this and just sort of notes about what he was creating. And one of the things he said is, put yourself in a feedback loop. Yes, the reason you put yourself in a feedback loop is so you can learn something, or rather learn to do something. You know, you do something and the results get processed somehow, perhaps just by yourself just looking at it. And you do another thing and the results of that get processed. And your action can constantly be tuned or corrected or refined by what you see. And it's something, just the idea of playing around with cables or the idea of playing around with code is one of the reasons that live coding has resonated with me a lot, is just being able to modify parameters really quickly instead of, I'm going to define this whole user interface and know ahead of time what I'm going to do. Because although, I've built this thing from, I've written all the code in it, basically, but I still don't know what's going to happen when I put things together, and each time I'm finding new things. And so it's sort of this, I think this is a great way of talking about both talking about specific algorithms and then also talking about a process as an artist with these technological tools. And let's see if this works. And this has a sound again. Let's see. No sound?
Hands-on film. They could really do extraordinary work. Did redesign our own consciousness. And we all remember film as one of the great influences.
By a video camera. The image is made of 16 slices of grayscale that camera sees, translated by computer to 16 discrete binary numbers. As I peel off layer by layer, number by number, the image that follows appears as a disk against the background. By artifacts, I mean that I have to share the creative process with the machine. It is responsible for too many elements in this work. These images come to you as they have come to me, in a spirit of exploration. I encourage you to blink your eyes, move your head, and if you are close to tape recorder, freeze and unfreeze the tape a few times.
if the lesson of the electronic systems for our generation or for our century should be summarized, then it was that the systems have their input-output possibility, that the output of a system can be looped into the input, and it behaves, as I say, it resonates, and it shows the inner architecture of the tool, of the machine. So
I'll close with this. This is Woody Vasilka talking about a project, I think in the 70s, although this interview was in 96. And he's kind of one of the pioneers of video art, and a lot of that world is my inspiration in algorithmic processes. So, thank you. And actually, I realized I wanted to show one more thing. So then I'll ask questions. But this is something I just did recently because I'm just learning how to use this tool. Even though I've made it, I'm still like, oh, how do you use this? And so this is a Twitter bot that basically directly from the editor you can upload something. And so I'm gonna say gray area here. Area, and we can upload something to the Twitter bot, and so this is like something that someone else did. Maybe if I refresh, this will show up. There I am. And so what happens is when you click on this link, then it just actually directly opens the editor with the code inside of it, and you can edit that. It's taking a little bit to load. There it goes. So this is what someone on the internet made, and then we can just actually edit it, like that didn't work, but yeah, we can directly edit this and then upload it again, and in the bot it shows what, not just a sketch, but kind of what it's based on also. So you could kind of trace how something evolves. And one of the things as I've continued to work on this, it's that, oh, this kind of software, it's not just a technical thing, but it's also a community of people using it, and how do the things that are built into the way the software kind of works, how do those create different ways of interacting with each other? And thinking about kind of open source code and sharing ideas around things. So I wanted to show that before ending. Thank you.
Questions?
First off, I want to say this is like the coolest thing I've seen this year. So thank you so much. I wanted to ask, is there ability to take audio input? I saw you had an audio thing in there, if you could show us that. And also, I want to know if this is like happening client side, or if the server is playing a role or something like that.
This is all happening client side. The only thing that's server side is that Webrtc thing so you could, if someone else was connected, I could use what they were doing as a video stream into what I'm doing, and that's the only thing that's server side. And also posting the images to Twitter is server side. And then everything that's a number here could also be a function. So I could make this modulate function correspond to, you can see there's like an FFT thing going on here. So I could make this modulate thing, it's like super sensitive, but, yeah. So anything that's a number, there could be a function, and so I use like OSC input or MIDI controllers to affect what's happening. Yeah.
So you're saying that you can be connected to another person's, if you're on the same browser, but you'd have to be on the same server, right? Like if I went to this, it wouldn't show you what's being played, right?
You could be anywhere and connect. It's not, I haven't worked on it in a while, so sometimes it works or doesn't. But you can be anywhere. You don't have to be on the same server or anything.
And I would see what's going on right now?
You would have to write. So there's like, I don't know how much time I have, but I could give myself a name on the network. Like, we're gonna see if this works. So I'll be OJ here. And then if I open another window with Hydra in it, here. So I could, we'll see if this works. Sometimes it doesn't work, but, so I could do init stream OJ here. Uh-oh, okay, it didn't work. Did it work? No. No, okay. Anyways. To be continued.
Just to take that one step further, I guess, have you, when it has been working, found any cool ways of using feedback between two people? Is there anything interesting to talk about there yet?
Yeah, it's honestly something it was the initial idea, but I got sort of stuck in just using it within itself, but it's something I want to explore a lot more. I've done kind of interesting things where when I've led workshops where each person has to take the stream of the person to their left, mix it with their camera input, and send it to the person to the right, and you get this sort of thing bouncing around the network with no starting point. And yeah, it's something I want to explore more, and just now I'm sort of going back to that. So.
Any others? Hands?
If there's time. Super cool. Kind of seems like, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what led you to develop this whole thing in the shape of the API. I don't know if this is a little contrived, but I'm wondering if there's a feedback loop between the API itself and your use of it, and how it evolved over time. Does that make sense?
Is there a specific aspect? Because I feel like that's a broad question.
I'm just wondering what led you to build this in the first place. Were there other tools that weren't doing it for you, or was it more of a learning experience?
Yeah, I didn't set out to build a tool at all. I just set out to explore these ideas. I was working with a theater in New York that does sort of telepresence stuff, and I was making sort of a hacky Skype with them to be able to composite videos on top of each other. And as I kind of learned how Webrtc worked, then I got interested in doing different things with it. And then another piece is that I was leading some beginner coding workshops, and I had this idea of like, oh, I want to make everyone not just code what they're doing, but have to use what someone else is doing in what they're doing. And I was doing it with P5, and it was just really hard for a beginner coder to even get to the point of like using that. So then I made my own thing.
All right. Thanks very much, Olivia.